to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm here with Valentina Tudos again. Thank you so much for joining me, my lovely resident guest.
Hello, Jules. Very nice to be here.
It's great to have you back. Today we're going to explore the topic of infidelity, which is really, really exciting. Let's start with, how do you define infidelity?
For me, it is basically a break in an agreement of exclusivity. When a couple makes a commitment to each other, they agree on this sort of deal that we make, which sometimes is implied in wedding vows or things like that. Or it is an explicit agreement that a couple makes where they agree to be exclusive with each other. And this means sexual and emotional exclusivity. When one of the parties is unilaterally breaking this agreement, that's kind of when we talk about infidelity. The opposite of it, obviously, being fidelity, which means that you are faithful, you are committed to your partner, and you are therefore not looking for excitement and fun on an emotional or a sexual level outside of your partnership.
When is it considered cheating or infidelity? You talk about emotional and physical or sexual. Is there cheating in both arenas?
Definitely. And most of the time, emotional infidelity is actually more hurtful and more difficult to get over, more difficult to repair. Because I think psychologically, the reason for that is when we love someone, we want to be chosen. We want to be the one. We want to know that we are fulfilling the other person's every single need, which of course is a myth, but that's a different story. We can talk about that later. When we don't feel that we can emotionally fulfill our partner's needs, a level of, let's say, 100%, if someone is looking for that sort of excitement or this fulfillment in another person, it actually hurts more than physical infidelity. Because I feel that we can dismiss it's just sex, it doesn't mean anything, easier than, actually, you didn't feel fulfilled in our relationship. You didn't feel that I was loving you enough, which usually we make it to mean that I am not good enough since you went to someone else to find this fulfillment.
And do you think also because relationships, the cornerstone of them is really often an emotional connection? So that's why it's harder to understand how somebody can emotionally separate from you, whereas from the physical, that seems to be an easier thing to wrap your head around?
Absolutely, yeah. This emotional connection that changes everything. If you compare the way we respond to someone we love versus someone we work with, it's much easier to establish boundaries with someone you work with or someone that you are just friends with because you don't have these expectations that this person has to be there for you to have your back. When we're in love with someone, our expectations go literally through the roof. We want them to be our everything. And therefore, when we are not their everything, we're disappointed and we feel that somehow we are not measuring up to our own expectations of it.
When we talk about meeting somebody or kissing somebody or dating them or having sex with them, where does the infidelity lie? Does it depend on how you've defined your own individual relationships?
For me, yes, because the way I look at it, and this is how I explain it to my clients, I may have mentioned this in our previous podcast, I can't remember, but this is something that I talk about very often. The foundation of every relationship is a series of unconscious or unspoken agreements that we make to each other when we engage in a romantic relationship. And those usually come with the labels. This is why the where are we going or what is this relationship about is meaningful and so difficult for a lot of people, because the moment you say we're boyfriend and girlfriend versus dating versus friends with benefits or just a one night stand, for me, it's a scale. The expectations in a one night stand is nothing. Basically, at best, physical sexual satisfaction. Friends with benefits, well, yeah, sex, but there's also the unspoken agreement that we're going to do something together as friends outside of the bedroom. Then when we say we're dating, there isn't necessarily an implication. So the unspoken agreement is that you kind of chosen me more than you've chosen other people. We do things together 2, 3 times, 4 times a week. Then if we move to, okay, now that we've been dating for 3 months, can we actually call each other boyfriend, girlfriend? The unspoken agreement with this tends to be exclusivity. Once you put that label on a relationship, it is this unspoken thing that, oh, okay, now I can't keep dating the other people. And the funny thing is, I was talking to someone that these days, the sign that you're in that exclusivity space is when you delete your dating apps.
Oh, right. Yeah, interesting. I've sadly never got to that point.
I've deleted mine only to reinstall it, actually.
Good for you.
Just to cheat the algorithm, but different story. So this unspoken expectation that comes within the concept of boyfriend, girlfriend, or a relationship sometimes can cause a problem. Like literally 2 weeks ago, I was helping a client who experienced this. She was very casually dating this guy. And at some point, he disappeared. And she didn't really understand what was going on. After him being quite intense for a couple of weeks, suddenly he disappeared. They bumped into each other accidentally. And then he said to her, well, my friend saw you on Bumble. So I assumed that we were dating. And therefore, because you were still on Bumble and my friend told me about it, well, that's not what I thought. So actually, his feelings were hurt by an assumption that he made. Just because they've been dating 3 times a week, he already put the little label. But for her, it was confusing because on their first date, they actually talked about what are they looking for? Are you looking for a serious relationship? He said, no, I'm not ready, still healing. So she thought, well, okay, then, I'm obviously not going to delete my apps for you. But yeah, this can actually hurt a lot of people. So going back to the assumptions and the contracts or, the unspoken agreements, once we get into a more committed relationship, a more explicitly committed relationship, like when we propose to someone or when we get married, of course, in the wedding vows, we say, I'll choose you over anyone else and it will just be you and nobody else. I don't know. I don't even know exactly the classic wedding vows, but something to that gist, right? With that, I mean, in most wedding vows, they explicitly say, I choose you in sickness and health, and all that stuff. That is a vow. That is a promise that we make to that person. So when you make that promise and then one party decides, oh, yeah, I know I said all that, but, scratch that. I'm just going to go and have a little fun because whatever. That's when it's cheating because you're breaking that agreement. If you talk to your partner and you say, hey, maybe I have some needs that cannot be met. There are people who are asexual, for example, who don't enjoy sex. Is it okay? So this is an interesting moral question, right? If you're the person who is not enjoying sex or who has maybe like a physical reason why they cannot have sex. There's people with vaginismus. There's people who simply hurt when they have sex. Is it okay to hold your partner in that agreement that you made that you will not have sex with someone else just because you don't like it? It is a very interesting moral dilemma for a lot of people because sex is the relationship glue for me. And in order for you to create emotional and intellectual intimacy, actually the sexual intimacy is very important. Plus, it's a biological need like eating. Would you make your partner starve just because you're on a diet? Some people do. But just because you cannot physically enjoy the act of sex, is it okay to stop your partner from having it or to condemn them to a life of self-pleasure?
Really good question. It is a sort of ethical and moral debate, isn't it? And I think a lot of what you have referred to really comes down to people having to communicate in their relationships and work out what the expectations are and what the agreement is.
Absolutely. And the more explicit your relationship agreements are, the less likely to have these feelings of broken heart over an infidelity. Infidelity hurts because you've made an assumption. And I always say, if you want to have no disappointments in life, you really need to check your expectations against reality all the time. And just a simple example with the dating app accident, when someone saw what they thought was a serious partner on dating apps, he made the assumption that something happened. His expectations didn't meet reality. He got disappointed and hurt. For me, I advocate this concept of radical honesty in a relationship. And it's the hardest thing to learn, actually, because with people we love, the stakes are the highest. The stakes of revealing our true self. It's this really weird conflict we have because, on the one hand, the reason we want a partner is that we are seen, like properly seen for who we really are. But because we are afraid if they truly see us for who we really are, they may not like us and reject us. This creates this huge conflict, internal conflict that we have, which makes a lot of people emotionally distant because we are afraid to open up, even though we want our partner to see us for who we really are. Because they're so important to us and because we don't want them to reject us, we don't show our true self to them. When it comes to sexual desire, just because you make a commitment to someone, it doesn't mean that you will never desire someone else. It doesn't mean that you will not experience chemistry with someone else. And that is because we are biologically designed to have a lot of partners. We are not designed to be monogamous. We are maybe designed to be serial monogamists, as Esther Perel puts it, in the sense that we choose to have one partner at a time. But that's more of a social thing, actually. It's not really biological how it was meant to be.
It's kind of like, I don't want to share you with anyone else.
Yeah, it is.
It's like a control or a jealousy. Like there's a lot of emotions tied up with
Exactly.
having a monogamous relationship, isn't there?
For me, I even talk about this in my TED Talk. It's about feeling safe. It's about having someone who has our back, someone who we know loves and accepts us and will not betray us, will not leave us out in the cold. It goes back to the plains of Africa when we were living in the wild. I always tell this story, probably bore everybody with it, but I think it's true. Like, if you think about it, we are actually not capable of living on our own, because if you take someone, even the person we are today, and we put someone in the jungle where there's a lot of danger, we cannot really defend ourselves from tigers, lions, and saber-toothed, whatever they were. Can't remember. Tigers, right? We cannot, because we don't have teeth, we don't have nails, we don't have anything. They say that safety in numbers is the way that the human race actually survived, is because if you have two people instead of one person can sleep and the other person can protect, can keep an eye, so to speak. So literally, when I think I want someone who has my back, I'm thinking about this. If I'm looking out for danger, I can only see this much in front of me. We have a limited range of vision. But if someone is sitting literally behind me, they fill in the 360 view. So I think it comes from that, from our desire to survive. And even though it's been a long time since any of us has been in mortal danger in the jungle, our brain has not evolved. So we look at relationships as the ultimate safety. And while having a partner there, like I said, is the biggest thing for us to ensure this safety, it's also one of the scariest things in the world. Because physically, we are safe when we have a partner. But emotionally, it is the hardest thing to do, to be truly naked.
We become more vulnerable.
To be truly naked spiritually and emotionally, to truly say to this person, I have a dark side. My dark side can be that I'm sometimes mean. The shadows, I talk about light and shadows a lot. But what I mean by shadows is the parts of ourselves that we reject, the parts of ourselves that we don't think are socially acceptable. It could mean that maybe I don't want to tell my partner that I'm greedy or that I'm jealous or that I have weird sexual fantasies, because what if they think I'm crazy?
7 deadly sins.
Exactly.
Yeah. We hide them, don't we, generally in our day-to-day life? We're socialized not to reveal those darker sides of ourselves. And then when you're in a relationship, you start to peel back the layers, don't you? The more you get to know and trust somebody. And then it's like, where do you draw your own personal line to how much you share?
Exactly. And to me, this goes back to the idea of self-love and self-acceptance. Because beyond the 7 deadly sins, we've actually got a very, very, very long list of things we don't like about ourselves. And we don't want to show those parts, right?
Yeah, whether it be your hairy toes or whatever. It could be
Exactly.
physical or internal things.
Exactly. But it could be, it could be that you're a little crazy sometimes, or that
Yeah.
you're just an angry person, or that you enjoy a little extra thing on the side sometimes. I don't mean another person, but just, I don't know, you have these little secret addictions to cupcakes or something, and you don't want your partner to know. Many people are hiding their smoking from their partners. Obviously,
The
people
amount
who
they
take
drink.
drugs
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff, right? So this is the fear that we have, that if we are, as much as we want to be truly seen, we're also afraid that if someone, this is one of the most common limiting beliefs that I see with people. If you truly knew me, you would not like me. This is one of the fundamental programs that we have.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And we did a podcast on limiting beliefs. I think it's back in like the early 100s. If people want to go back and check it out. Yeah. But it's called Limiting Beliefs. And that's such an interesting podcast because I really didn't know how much those negative beliefs about yourself can impact relationships. And I wonder how much that's actually linked to infidelity. Like if you have these limiting beliefs or you don't have a great self-esteem or you don't feel so good about yourself, do you need to then seek affirmation outside of your relationship?
Well, things brings us to exactly how I feel. The reason I feel that infidelity is a huge opportunity for self-development and self-discovery in a relationship. And the reason I say that, I know a lot of people will go, "What? Are you endorsing infidelity or something?" I don't endorse infidelity, of course not. I think in the context of an explicit agreement of commitment and exclusivity, it's obviously not the right thing to do. I'm not here to judge, but it's not you keeping your word, right? But when it comes to you being caught up in a situation like this, for me, it's always that whole story that we talked about before, whether you approach a situation from the perspective of being the victim, someone who is helpless, who things happen to, or from the hero or the victor perspective, which is the person who looks at that experience and thinks, what is this supposed to teach me? What is the lesson here? What can I do about it?
What do you think some of the lessons are that infidelity might teach us in a relationship?
Well, a lot of people, in my experience as a coach, believe that infidelity happens when things are missing in the relationship, where, we make it to mean that it's somehow our fault that the relationship didn't work out, which is one of the most damaging parts of it, because the meaning that we make, the story that we tell ourselves, it is, oh, my husband went to have an affair because obviously I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me, that I'm not made for this, that I am not lovable. So the limiting beliefs, because they are a big part of this story, are bringing us down. If you take that view, in my opinion, you take the victim perspective. You say, well, there's nothing I could do. I tried my best, but I'm obviously not good enough. So what can I do? It's out of my control. I'm just a victim. There's nothing I can do. But if you think about it from the other perspective, I feel that the opportunity in infidelity is for you to, first of all, understand that maybe infidelity is not about you, actually, because there is this very beautiful quote from Marcel Proust that I always think of in this situation. And Proust says, a voyage of discovery is not always about going new places, but it's about looking with different eyes, seeing with different eyes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that really is very profound, really.
It is. And
Yeah.
it tells me that very often in a relationship, we get stuck in a certain role because we believe that our partner likes certain things about us. We only allow that part of ourselves to shine, to come out, to be expressed. But there's so many other parts of us which very often we restrict, we limit, we reject, we put aside. We say, no, I cannot be adventurous sexually with my partner. I have this lots from my clients. It's like, oh, my wife or my husband is not interested in sexploration. They're not interested in.
Oh, that's such a cool word.
I love it.
Yeah.
But it's a great word, right?
Yeah.
Because people are not necessarily very well matched when it comes to their desire for adventure and exploration, whether it is in the sexual space or in other spaces, then you have to make a choice. Like, okay, am I going to bring down my desires and my interest in exploring different areas of sexuality because my partner is not into that? Which means that I'm actually almost like breaking this part of my body. Actually, I had one client who came to me and she was saying, I'm a little bit bored. We talked about open relationships before. And she says, I really wish I could just stop this part of myself who is yearning for more, for like more interesting, more spice in the bedroom. And I said, okay, well, if you did that, how would that feel? Like imagine, project yourself just thinking husband, 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 whatever is happening in your bedroom right now, this is it. That's the best you can get. Think of yourself in 10 years' time. And she said, oh my God, it feels like I'm just numb. This is, to me, the metaphor is like, okay, if you had to close down that part of you, is like cutting off your right arm and saying, yeah, it's okay, I can manage with one arm. Lots of people do it. But is it how you want to live your life, you know? So when it comes to this inequality or imbalance between two people, the person can make the choice to cut their arm off, or they can say, well, if this partner is not interested in sexploration, do I feel safe enough in my relationship to mention to my partner that I know we made a commitment, I know we made this agreement. However, this is my truth. I want to explore more. Are you willing to go with me on this journey or not? And if the partner says no, we come back to the moral dilemma that I said before. Is it our right as committed partners to limit the development of that person or the manifestation of a person's multiple sides of their personality? Or is it more loving to say, well, if I can't give you that, your happiness is my biggest priority, even if it's not with me?
But what about the argument that you're really going to be very, very lucky to find somebody who has exactly the same libido and the same sexual desires and the same kind of interest in exploration that you do? Like most relationships are going to have some form of imbalance, aren't they?
True. And that is, to me, the social programming. It's a myth that you're going to find your perfect partner.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, are they? Yeah.
But if they were perfect, which means that if you and your partner were exactly the same, it would become boring really, really quickly. Because again, what we're looking for in a relationship is maybe 80% sameness, which means similar interests, similar vision. Yes, we have lots of things in common. Yes, we have the same, I don't know, libido, although that's rare, or the same interest in things. But then we also are looking for a significant amount of, I can't remember his name, but it's quoted in Esther Perel's book, State of Affairs, called otherness, which means mystery and discovery and things. Because, you know, I wouldn't want to date myself.
You're bored with yourself.
I'm a wonderful person, but if I dated someone who's exactly like me, there would be no discovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And desire, sexual desire, actually resides in that balance between familiarity and mystery.
And that's why infidelity occurs, because people are seeking that desire, and that desire can be lost in a relationship, but it doesn't have to be. Is that right?
Exactly.
How can you keep that desire in your relationship?
Growing together as opposed to growing apart, you know, because for me, I think I mentioned this before, relationships are people growing machines. Sounds weird, but the reason we are in relationships is because the people that we are with reflect back to us parts of ourselves that we have not discovered with other people.
That's an interesting concept.
Let's do an exercise. Imagine that every person in your life, like if you close your eyes right now and imagine yourself in a room, and imagine that you're surrounded by mirrors. And in each mirror is the reflection of someone in your life, a particular person, your mother, your father, your first boyfriend, your daughter, and so on. And just notice, what is the quality of that relationship? What is that person teaching you? How is that relationship working? Because your mother would have taught you different things from your father, from your siblings.
That's so interesting. As I do this, I can see that I learn so much from my daughter. That's actually who I learn the most from in all of my relationships.
Such a
Isn't that
beautiful thing, right?
interesting? Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
The point of this exercise is to make you see that each person comes into your life to teach you a particular lesson. And your daughter would have taught you a lot about unconditional love, I would imagine.
Yes, but that's almost innate. That's not something that you really learn as a parent. It's almost just there. I think she's taught me more about using my skills and taking risks and being brave and being proud of who I am and using my brain cells more and things like that. She's
Challenging you to grow.
challenging me to grow. Exactly.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
The people who are meaningful in our life are the ones who challenge us to grow, who push our boundaries.
And self-acceptance as well.
Absolutely.
Mm.
You have a romantic partner, or in any relationship, actually, the relationship stagnates when there's no more growth. When you start assuming that you know everything about each other and that you are just, let's say, this taking each other for granted phase usually comes up right after the romance and the power struggle phase in a relationship. And then you kind of go, okay, I know you. Now you're familiar enough to me that I don't have to pay attention or listen or notice what's happening with you. But the reality is we grow every single day. The person that you are today is not the person that you were 6 months ago or a year ago or 10 years ago. So if you are in a partnership for 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever years, you are never the same person. But the question is, are you growing together? Are you still paying attention to each other? Are you still exploring things together? Are you identifying this transition that your partner is going through? And are you joining them on their journey? Or are you saying, well, now you like this and I'm not on board with that. I'm not going to go into volunteering, let's say, right? I'm just going to go off and buy myself a motorbike and I'm going to stay in my garage and fix bikes and you can do your volunteering. That's not exactly growing together. Yes, there's growth, but it's growing apart. So a lot of infidelity situations happen at that point where you believe that you know everything. You no longer listen to each other. You no longer pay attention. You no longer see each other. You become disconnected from each other. So then, because one, there is this part missing, the part where you no longer are in a lover's bubble, as I call it. You no longer explore together. You've kind of stopped this journey.
You become complacent.
Exactly. Taking each
Yeah.
other for granted, right?
Yeah.
So then the options are, okay, well, I can choose to be numb like this, not to have any satisfaction. I can choose not to have a conversation, not to be heard, not to feel like anybody cares about me. Or the natural desire is to go and meet someone else, or it just happens.
And I think it's important for us to point out that not all relationships get to that point. Many of them can continue to thrive and grow and be exciting and just flourish. And also, I think it's also important to point out that infidelity is not always down to that dynamic of the relationship, is it? It also can be just that person is not happy within themselves or something has changed, which has shifted them, and then they're seeking something personally, which has sometimes nothing to do with their partner. Is that true too?
That's exactly the opportunity that I was talking about. So it's not always about the partner. In fact, most of the time is not. There is a superficial layer in every relationship that you can make the meaning that, oh, it's because my partner or I haven't been good enough. But most of the times, the quote from Marcel Proust, to me, it's also actually a quote from Esther Perel from this book, The State of Affairs, which I highly, highly recommend to anyone who's been in an infidelity situation. She says something like, when we stray, when we seek excitement somewhere else, it's not always because we want to be with someone else, but because we want to become someone else.
That's what I was trying to say. Good old Esther Perel. Yes, that's right. It's when you're seeking something else internally and that you're not happy in your own skin, job, life, mental health, whatever it is.
When the parts of your personality that are being expressed in that relationship are no longer enough and you want to explore different things and you need other mirrors, going back to the mirror metaphor. In one relationship, we have a certain amount of parts of us that are being seen. Okay, this, and this, and this. But to be the adventurous, to be the crazy, to be the player, to be whatever, we actually need other people who we don't have such high stakes with. So whichever side of infidelity you happen to be sitting, the perpetrator or the victim, shall we say, there are lessons in both those experiences. So the opportunity You know how I mentioned earlier how being the victor or the hero asks himself or herself, what is the lesson that I can learn from this? And if you are the perpetrator, the opportunity here is to think, okay, which parts of me I wasn't able to express or allow to come to light in my first relationship because of fears, because of limiting beliefs, because of social programming and all that stuff. There are all these different layers that stop us, all these barriers. But if you want to understand why that happened, because a lot of people cheat and then they go, how can I be so stupid? I have the most amazing person at home and I don't understand how I could be so stupid because the programming that we're not supposed to cheat is so deep. And I've had this situation many times with clients like, I don't understand. I hate myself for this, but I just couldn't stop myself. And the couldn't stop myself is this unstoppable desire to grow that we have, and if we don't allow it, the universe gives it to us sometimes in a person that comes into our life just to push us into this new stage of development where we are forced to explore parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, or maybe we stop ourselves from seeing. If we took an ideal case scenario, our partners should be the ones that we reveal ourselves to in all our glory, with our shadows and our light. But we don't because there's so much fear. So what do? If I go and have an affair with someone else, I can be whoever I want in that relationship. So if I was, let's say, always the good girl, always the person who followed the rules and did things the right way, and I got married with the people that my parents told me, the person who my parents chose for me, I have a lot of these situations. And I did this and I did that. So basically, I did everything by the book, how I was supposed to. But then there's a part of me who never played, who never followed my own instincts, my own desires. I always did what other people wanted me to do, but I've never been myself. So the easiest way to solve this problem, although it's actually very complicated, the consequences are complicated. The simple thing is I might fall in love with someone who brings out this kind of teenage kind of fantasy or something that I would never be able to express to my husband, for example. And this happens a lot of times. So many people are trapped into these fake prison that they've created for themselves, which is made of shoulds. You know how I hate the word should. This narrow space that was chosen or we chose to be in because of society. So when something like this happens, when we fall in love with someone that literally shows us parts of ourselves that we have never allowed ourselves to see, this is why affairs are so exhilarating. This is why they have such huge appeal. This is why 95% of people would say, yeah, if that happened to me, I would do it.
Not just the desire and the excitement and the risk taking, but it's the fact that you are seeing something else in yourself and it's an opportunity for growth.
That is the opportunity, but you have to be quite conscious about it, right? Of course, a lot of people don't know why they're doing it. It's this unstoppable thing. It just happened. And I hated myself every moment of every day I had this affair. I hear this a lot, right? So people come and say, oh, I've had this affair. I hate myself. This is going against everything that I ever believed in. I cannot believe I am this situation that I'm cheating on my partner. I just can't stop myself.
And it's not always about love either, is it? Sometimes it's just about sex or taking a risk or...
For me, it's about expressing those shadows. It's about being someone else. It's about having an opportunity to escape from your prison. Because sometimes the way we express our personality in a relationship can be very narrow. Like, oh, I'm this guy's wife or I'm a mother. Before I came here, I had this distress call with a client who has been literally trapped in a relationship for 16 years. And the only thing she likes about herself is that she's a mother. Nothing else.
Comes down to identity as well, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's interesting.
The opportunity that I see in infidelity is for self-growth, for you to say, because we choose only to see one part of ourselves with one partner, if we have another partner that the universe gives us, we can see how we behave differently. If I was a very submissive woman in one relationship, for example, maybe I'll meet someone else who just brings out the beast in me.
Like a chance to reinvent yourself.
It's a chance to feel and to allow the other parts of me to come out. It's literally a game of hide and seek.
Are there clear markers that are indicators that somebody is having an affair when you're in a relationship? Are there things that people can look for, or does it just vary from relationship to relationship?
I think there's some fundamental signs, red flags, and lack of intimacy is one of them. I'm not talking about, oh, if someone doesn't sleep with you for 4 weeks, it means they're cheating. That's not true. It's basically extended periods of lack of connection. For me, that is the first thing because yeah, you can expect that, oh, we're just not talking, or the cold shoulder, the silent treatment. This kind of stuff can be the triggers that push a person over the edge. But if the infidelity is caused by needs not being met in that relationship, the need for affection, the need for appreciation, the need for physical touch. If you think love languages, we talked about this before, right? If your partner isn't showing you appreciation or you don't feel loved, that is an unmet need. So, because of that unmet need, that is one of the reasons why people go outside to have those needs met because they are our needs. We cannot choose, oh, I don't need to need this. I don't want to need this, but we do. Whether we want it or not, we want affection, we want appreciation, we want to feel loved, we want to feel prioritized. So, when these needs are not met, typically, most people, depending on how strong our value system is and how comfortable we are with breaking some rules, we go and find someone else to satisfy those needs. When the reason why a person is cheating is because they're looking for themselves, is again because their partner has not noticed that they've grown. So again, it's a consequence of lack of intimacy. You haven't had a conversation with your partner about who they are as opposed to what they do every day for a long time. You might want to ask yourself, am I actually opening the door? Am I manifesting infidelity?
If somebody listening to this podcast is feeling like they want to step outside their relationship, they're not feeling comfortable or satisfied, what advice would you give them to kind of reignite their relationship and bring back the excitement and the desire for them within the relationship that they're in?
Well, first of all, this person needs to understand where this desire is coming from. Is it because there are parts of them that they are not feeling comfortable to express in this relationship? And the reason why they're not comfortable to express that. So, what are the shoulds that they have created in their mind? What is the box that they have created? Because this is really our desire to jump out of our comfort zone, right? Marriage tends to be a comfort zone. The first thing is like this, okay, if I feel uncomfortable in my little glass ball and I want to jump to another one, what is making me uncomfortable here? What can I not express here? Basically, this is self knowledge and self discovery. If I know myself, if I know what I'm looking for, then I can choose to first, within that commitment agreement that you make with your partner, you say, I will tell you the truth, right? You will be my first port of call if I have any issues in my life. So, naturally, if there is love in that relationship, I would imagine that a person would, if you have radical honesty, of course, that you would first go to your partner and say, hey, I've noticed that I want to explore different things. As I get older, as I mature, I'm kind of feeling that there's a need for me to expand. And this is a path that I would like to explore. Are you with me? Is that okay with you? Can we try it together? Most of the time, we're afraid to say that because we think, oh, my partner is going to reject me, is going to think I'm crazy. What am I thinking? I'm a middle aged woman. I don't do that stuff anymore, as I've heard before. And then you're actually expressing yourself, you're radically honest, you're communicating to your partner how you're feeling. And yes, there is a chance that they might say you're crazy. But think about the opportunity that they would say, damn, I've been thinking about the same. Because if you already have a relationship with someone that you love, it's going to be much harder to go outside knowing that you're cheating. And it's going to be a much more exciting journey to start something together. This is the opportunity for growth individually and with the other partner. And if you have a mature partner who is willing to listen, because in that moment, that's a huge moment of vulnerability, right? I open my heart to you. I tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. When I do that, I'm inviting you to do the same. Yes, you could judge me, but the fact that I know you could judge me and I trust that you won't, because this is what love is. Trust that I can show you my heart and you're not going to crush it. Then I'm opening the door for you to say, actually, you know what? That's like not really my thing, but how about we try? I was thinking this. And if those two avenues that each partner wants to follow can converge at some point, there is an opportunity to spark a lot of growth, a lot of exploration, a lot of sexploration if it is about sex. And if they decide that, no, that's not really what I'm into, then still having a conversation can say, okay, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to decide to block this part of ourselves and live unhappily for the rest of our life, unhappily ever after? Or can we be mature enough and trust each other enough that maybe we can have the freedom to go and explore those things with someone else?
And then we're talking about open relationships, aren't we? Which we also have a podcast on.
Exactly. What have
I
we
don't know
talked
where
about?
that's in, like in the 80s. I don't know. That's called open relationships. But yeah, that's what we're saying.
Exactly. There are multiple avenues of dealing with that. And it could be, like Proust says, you don't have to go outside of your relationship to have happiness, but you need to change your perspective. You need to be open to say, okay, we've always done it this way, but maybe there's an opportunity. And, an open relationship doesn't have to mean, as we talked about before, that each of you has different partners. It could be that maybe you explore things together, which again brings you closer together if you can manage jealousy and all that complicated stories. I'm not going to go into the details. But what I'm saying is that we look at life usually in a binary mindset, like it's A or B, it's black or white. And it's true that the universe is duality. But I also believe that there are multiple shades of gray, 50 or more. I don't know. I haven't counted. But since we're talking
That's funny,
infidelity.
yeah.
See, the beauty in the title of that book is that actually there are so many aspects of us. And that's what, to me, that means. 50 Shades of Grey means that, yes, you could be black or white, and you could say, I only choose you like this, or I only choose you like this. Or true love is embracing you in all this grayness in the middle.
And going through the ups and the downs together. And really, communication is one of the keys in everything that we're talking about. It really is a very important part. Why do you think that there's so much shame and guilt associated with infidelity? And the fact that we're conditioned socially to not do it, and that the social ideal is monogamy or marriage or partnerships?
Did I talk to you about this? I can't remember. But the whole idea of why marriage and exclusivity was created. So this is from one of the books of Dr. Helen Fisher, who's an anthropologist who studies love and all that stuff. And she talks about the origins of marriage is actually greed.
Oh, because you can like double your wealth and your assets and
Well,
things like
if you
that.
think about it, right? Again, primitive times, blah, blah, blah. Our brain still thinks we're in primitive times, like we're not really fully evolved to this where we are today. But think about it. As humans, our primary biological commandment is perpetuate the species, right? And of course, as individuals, as much as we are part of a broader organism that is our species, each individual wants their genes to move on to the next level.
Procreation, yeah.
Exactly, right? And we know from genetics that the strongest genes are the ones that survive. Let's say in the primitive times, it was kind of a free for all sort of thing. Anybody could get with anybody and get everybody pregnant, and everyone was happy. And actually, in matriarchal societies, women took care of the children in their female communities, and men were just used as studs. Come and do the job here, right? But at some point, when the world moved into patriarchal social models, the strongest guy in the city, the one who had the biggest, and basically when agriculture started, right? When we moved from being hunters and gatherers to being whatever, settled down. The guy who was the richest guy with the biggest piece of land and stuff, and with the most cows or whatever he had, he was like, well, if I'm having babies with this woman, but then she can also have sex with 5 other guys, I don't know if it's my kids who are going to inherit my cows and my land.
Oh, right. Yes.
So how can I ensure that my kids make it?
Oh, so it's about lineage.
It is about lineage,
Oh,
right?
that's so
It's about
interesting. Yeah.
genes
Yeah, being and passing on your genetics and also
and your
your
wealth,
Yeah.
right?
Okay,
So
interesting.
this is how men have created a world in which the woman is not allowed to have sex with multiple partners, but they can. Because think about it, from the dark ages, it's always been okay for men to go and spread their seeds, right? Think about this crazy dichotomy, this gender inequality in our world, that if a man has multiple sex partners,
He's a
everyone high
stud.
fives
Yeah.
him and alpha male, go get them, tiger, la la la. Yeah, studs. If a woman is even seen to have more than one partner, she's automatically branded a slut.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? There's a social inequality in the way that it's presented.
And to me, it comes back to that.
Yeah.
This is fear
Yeah.
that you're not going to be the one who passes on your genes to other people. Then we live in this model in which the woman can only have one partner. It's true that we only produce one egg a month and men produce, I don't know how many sperm during their,
Millions.
whatever.
Yeah.
Even if you think about it that way, men
Even biologically,
they
yeah.
are programmed to do that. And we're programmed for monogamy, actually.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept as well that I haven't thought about, but you're right.
They always say that when men are the ones that cheat more, which is not actually true in
Oh,
today's
is
world.
it not?
It's not just men who want to have multiple partners, although they are biologically programmed, but a lot of women are open to that.
Oh, sure. I understand that women do as well, but I thought that we had the statistics, it would be more men than women that do it.
Well, there is a difference in reason why. So a man usually cheats. For a man, how we say sex is sex, right? So a man often cheats just because of this biological imperative to spread his seed as much as it can. For a woman, it's because she's not feeling safe in that relationship. So when a woman cheats, it's usually much more related to emotional connection than the need to have sex for the sake of sex, which is why for women, there is no such thing as no strings attached sex. If you have sex with a man, you're bonded with him chemically. We talked about oxytocin,
Yeah, oxytocin,
and
yeah.
dopamine
And
and all that
I think I
stuff.
said women have sex to get love and men love to get sex.
Exactly. This is exactly it. You remember your
Yeah.
codes very well, and you're
Yeah.
right. That's it, right? Infidelity is also gender biased in the sense that when a woman cheats, she's actually usually doing it because some of her affection needs are not met in the relationship. So she's looking for someone to fulfill that need, but also because often our identity as a woman is very much created by social programming because we've been put in this box. It's like you're a slut if you go out. Whereas women, we have bigger barriers to overcome towards exploring non-committed relationships. It's harder for us to do it. It doesn't mean the desire isn't there. From biologically, both sexes, both genders have the same thing. But because of social programming that says, oh, but if I sleep with someone else, if I kiss someone else, if I flirt with someone else, everyone will think I'm a slut.
Yeah, it's so sad, really, isn't it?
It
It's
is
really
sad.
sad.
I think we should embrace our inner sluts.
I think I'm past that. I'm too tired. I just want to watch Netflix. But I think what's interesting is that you've said already that having an affair can be an opportunity for growth. Do you see that affairs often end relationships? And do you see many examples of people coming back together and having an even better relationship and learning and growing because of infidelity?
Yes and yes. It really depends on the person. Actually, because I remember that that's what we was going to talk about today.
It could be to do with boundaries, couldn't it, as well? Sorry, go on.
Okay, it's fine. I was like, before I came here this morning, I remember that I talked about this subject at Wonder Fruit Festival last December. I literally gave a talk, a half an hour talk about infidelity as an opportunity. And if your listeners want to watch, it's on YouTube. And what I was talking about there is my personal experience. You know that I was in a relationship for 18 years with my last partner. And before him, I was in a relationship of 11 months. And there was infidelity in both these relationships. So my previous boyfriend, like when I was 25, he cheated on me and ended up marrying the woman he cheated on me with. Whereas my long-term boyfriend, in the beginning of our relationship, he also cheated on me. But that particular instance of infidelity actually made us stronger and made us explore open relationships and so many things. And to me, this kind of explains the two sides of the story that you're talking about. The reason the first boyfriend, the first relationship, or like the first infidelity ended our relationship, it's because it actually showed us that we were not very compatible, that our relationship was based on chemistry, and that we weren't really going down the same road. We didn't see the world in the same way. So the infidelity was a consequence of lack of compatibility, and therefore it was a good thing. I learned my lesson. I learned that actually all these things that were red flags in that relationship, they led to the demise of that relationship, but it was actually a blessing in disguise because this person taught me so much through not being my ideal partner. The second time, we were actually very aligned. We had very similar visions. We had very similar values. So that second infidelity pushed both of us into this growth and development process in which I sat down with myself and I thought, okay, well, was this about me? Or was this about the fact that we became disconnected? Or was this about something that he needed to explore, a space that he wanted to grow into that I wasn't able to give him? And that shift, when I realized that his desire to be with someone else had actually nothing to do with me, it did point out to some lack of connection in our relationship, which we were not aware of. Because when you grow disconnected, you are disconnecting more and more every day. And it's not like you're cutting it with a sword.
Slowly, isn't
It's
it?
slow, and then you just get used to it and you don't realize until it's too late. And then that's basically the slap in the face. The infidelity is the slap in the face that showed
It's
us.
the reality check, isn't it? That things aren't going
I
or
called
aren't
it
as
in
they
the
seem.
talk, I called it a hard, cold dose of reality because that's what it is. It slaps you in the face. You go, wait, actually, we haven't really sat down with each other. We haven't really connected for a while. So then, because that need for connection was not met, he had this situation. And then I was like, okay, well, obviously we can do something about it. We can spend more time together. We can fill that gap. We can start refilling each other's cups with affection and attention and love and all that stuff, spend time together, which we didn't do because he was traveling a lot. So that was step number one. But then it also pushed us to go deeper and said, what do I really want from this relationship? What is a new vision for us? What is possible for us as people? Because we are compatible, because our values and our visions are similar, the foundation is good.
So you reframed your relationship.
Several times over.
Right.
Because I've cheated and there's been a lot of things. Watch my TED Talk. It's there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste anybody's time with that, but it's in the TED Talk and it's in the talk from Wonderfruit. So if you are very compatible with each other, if you are very aligned, it doesn't have to be the end at all. It can be the beginning of a more beautiful, a more intense relationship because you are rediscovering yourselves and the other person. So it's like a new beginning.
Do you think that there's more of a problem if an affair happens early in a committed relationship compared to in a fairly longer relationship? Do you think it makes any difference?
I haven't thought about it that way. So the timing of it, I'm just trying to kind of go through all the stories in the quick progression to figure out.
It probably doesn't matter because I guess in some ways new relationships can be more evolved and deeper than some people who've been in relationships for a long, long time. But maybe there's more of a commitment if you've been in a relationship for a long, long time. So maybe you'll work harder to overcome these things. It just depends. It's massive generalization.
I don't think the timing is an issue or that the timing is a big factor. As I said, it's really more about unmet expectations and unfulfilled desires. And you can have very high expectations from the first 5 days of the relationship, and they can be completely in your head. The fantasy, basically, what I call an imagination ship.
That's a cool word too.
I love it.
You're creating your own language here.
No. It's actually a pretty common word.
Oh, is it? Okay, great.
But for me, an imagination ship is where we all start. The whole Disneyfication of love, as I call it, because the moment we start liking someone, we've already created the whole story, and that sees us on front of the altar, right?
My husband always used to say that I lived in a Brady Bunch world.
Well,
I thought everything was idealistic and wonderful and that I wasn't really in touch with reality.
So you were not in a relationship, you were in an imagination ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you lived in a reality that didn't really match where your husband was. You were not aligned.
Totally. And it was a disastrous relationship. So you're spot on.
Exactly. But that's very, very common because obviously all the hormonal aspects of love are essentially like being on drugs, which means that we create fantasy worlds in our head. And the problem is disconnect when couples are not being able to be truly honest and to disclose how far they've already imagined the relationship. Of course, there's going to be disappointment. And of course, there's going to be misalignment. And of course, like I said with my client, one person thinks they're in a committed relationship, the other person thinks they can still sleep around. And then when the sleeping around is discovered, the other person is hurt. But they've never had an alignment, they've never had a commitment. So that's really the tricky thing, because a lot of my clients are saying, well, at what point do I make a commitment? At what point do I go exclusive? It's like, well, first of all, it needs to be an explicit agreement. And you need to define the boundaries. See, you're talking about that. What are the boundaries of that agreement? Because I think I talked about this in the open relationship episode. All relationships start open. Let's be honest about it. These days, nobody jumps into, or very few people, let's say, jump straight into an exclusive relationship from day one. So everyone is not really monogamous to start with, because dating in itself means I can go on a date with guy number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week, 7 times a week. I can have a date every week if I want to. And it is up to me to choose at what point do I have sex with any of them. I could have sex with all of them. If I have no exclusivity agreement, I could have sex with 2 of them or 3 of them. It's up to me, right? But that technically means I'm in an open relationship. As long as I see these people more than once, let's say. So if I have regular dates with 3 guys, technically it means I'm in an open relationship.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. And when people have discovered an affair and if they're trying to work on their relationship, what do people often need to move forward in their relationship?
Reassurance. A lot of reassurance, because, of course, once your expectations are not met, you are disappointed and the trust is broken. And what's missing the most, I recently went through this experience with a couple who were actually in their 60s. They've been together for 23 years or whatever. And there was infidelity repeated with the same person, 4 instances where this particular situation got uncovered. The first 3 times, okay, right, let's work on it, let's work on it, let's work on it. But then as the other person kept staying in the picture more or less, at one point he was like, okay, we're ready to break up, but we just want to give it a last try. So what was really required, it's probably easier if I give a specific example than if I talk in general terms. So what was really needed for them was constant reassurance of the perpetrator to the victim that, no, I want to be with you. You are my choice. And I am prepared to do everything that you need for me to show you that I choose you. I continuously choose you, and that I've learned my lesson, and that I would never do that again because I realize what I have. So in this case, this was one of the happy examples where this couple is now exploring their interests together. They're doing lots of things together. They're very, very excited about their new life. He picked up, I think he's like 67. I can't remember how old he is. But he's a man who's been there, done that, is retired. And now he's discovering some new interests. She's discovering some similar interests where they can do things together. So it needed this push. They were kind of a little bit lost, both of them, and disconnected.
Did it need forgiveness as well?
Oh, yeah, of course, of
Yeah,
course.
that's an important part, isn't it?
Lots of letters of forgiveness, lots of appreciation, lots of reassurance. And the pain will continue to keep coming up, because healing is not in one go done. We stick the wound together. Very often, wounds keep bleeding again and again when events happen. I think there was something for them where there was some sort of anniversary they were going to go to, and they were going to go to the same restaurant where the infidelity was discovered or something. So, of course, massive trigger issues and all that. So you kind of have to go back and repair all that and break those associations, right? Because very often, let's say you live in Hong Kong, you're going to go back to the same restaurant where you had a fight, or you're going to go past the same office where something happened. So what you need, instead of avoiding those situations, you actually need to go back there and create new memories. Sometimes people find it really hard to stay in the same city as their ex if there's infidelity, because they go, oh yeah, I've seen him with that bitch over there. Sorry, B word.
Now we have to make it explicit. No, I'm kidding.
For me, there's forgiveness that is necessary. There's understanding, there's reassurance, and there is this need to let go of the past, to let go of that hurt, and to say, you know what, it's done, it's over.
That's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
It's
That for
the
a lot of
hardest
people,
thing to do.
reminders and comparison and all that sort of thing.
I was talking to one of my friends last week who was mentioning how her mom and her stepdad are angry with each other because the stepdad's wife from 35 years ago somehow did something.
Can be entrenched in your psyche, and it can be so hard to
But for
let
me, it's
go.
like, wait, what? These people have not been together for 35 years and they still
Still
have beef
angry.
with each other? They
Yes.
still hate each
So
other?
that's where forgiveness comes in and
Of
moving on, doesn't
course.
it? It
Because
really
this is
does.
poison. This is poison. To me, is these people have not learned a lesson. Yes, there has been infidelity and there has been cheating. But if you stay attached to that, you essentially live your entire life with hatred, with frustration, with jealousy. If you're not willing to let go of it, it will poison you.
Yeah, all those negative emotions are just not good for you.
And what is the point?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Let it go. Be
Learn.
happy.
But this is the
Yeah,
the
move
conscious
on.
part. Understand that each partner has contributed in one way or another to this through not being there. You're contributing to it. Through not choosing your partner, you're contributing to it. Through not forgiving your partner, through not paying attention to your partner. When you do nothing, you still have a role.
And you're talking about not contributing to the recovery, aren't you? Not to the affair.
No, I'm talking about the origin of the affair. Some people say, oh, but I did nothing to drive him away. Yeah, but he also did nothing to bring him close.
I mean, I think, yeah, when it's both parties involved, yes, that makes sense.
Well, like I said, relationships are, for me, mirrors of each other. So the way I talk to people about this energy wise, right? Every exchange that we have with people around it is an energy exchange. And if you want to visualize it, I visualize it as an infinity sign, as a figure eight of how whatever energy I give you, it comes to you, it passes through your body, it picks up your own energy, and then it comes back to me. And it's just literally an infinity of connection. But when we start taking each other for granted, what we do is we put barriers up and we no longer allow our partner's energy to pass through us. So we no longer contribute, we no longer feed this cycle. And when we do that, we're still contributing by cutting off the connection. No relationship ever breaks because one partner alone does something. All troubles in relationships actually are a consequence of an action and reaction or lack of reaction, which is also
Got
action.
it. Okay, yeah, that does make sense. That really does make sense.
I'm not saying that the victim in a situation is to blame, but if you are the victim of that situation, it is also helpful to understand, is there something that I should do differently, that I could do differently, that I can change? Because yes, the other person is trying to explore parts of their personality that cannot be shown here. And the way you are creating that possibility, you're opening that door, is by maybe being judgmental, maybe being not open. If you're giving your partner the feeling that if they came to you with their truth and you will reject them because they're telling you that truth, you are contributing to them looking for that solution elsewhere.
That's interesting because it brings me to my last point, which is when I was researching for this interview, I read that Esther Perel says that affairs are about hurt, betrayal, longing, loss, and exploration. And that's really what you're just talking about. And that exploration then leads you to either reform or break apart. And it just depends on how that process goes.
And sometimes an affair marks the end of a life experience. It basically means the end of a cycle. It can mean that you and your partner have learned everything you needed to learn from each other. And it's time for you to part ways. Job done, as I like to tell people. It's like, look, did this guy teach you something? Yes. Okay, so he's done his job. Do you feel you've learned the lesson? Yes. Okay, so let him go now. Move on. Now you need someone else to teach you your next lesson, but you need to be open to that. Because if you still stay attached to this guy, you're not allowing yourself to receive a new experience in your life. You have to be open to it from a personal perspective, but also to allow your partner to have an exploration of who they are. And again, we are facilitating each other's growth in a relationship. When you are in that mindset, when you feel that the lesson is not learned and that this partner still has a lot to offer, an affair can be that moment, the lightning strike that says, okay, let's sit down together and let's see what are we missing or what the potential is for us. And this is so beautiful to see when people who thought they were like never again, not happening, actually they realize that their future is very bright and that they can reinvent themselves and their relationship, and they can be so happy together. I love it when that happens.
Oh, that's amazing. Valentina, thank you so much for coming to talk to me today about infidelity. If my listeners want to get in touch with you for dating and relationship advice or coaching or hypnotherapy, how can they do that?
Well, the easiest thing that has not changed for 7 years is my website, which is happyeverafter.asia. Happy, not happily. I think since I can't remember when we did the last podcast, but I have changed my Instagram handle because I'm now working on a completely new program, which is about revealing your inner queen. So my new Instagram handle is The Real Queen Maker. This idea that every woman has a queen inside of her, which is that person able to control her destiny. So I'm working very much on creating this new program. Anyway, stay tuned.
Yeah, and it's great. And we'll have to do a podcast about that. But if my listeners are interested, you do loads of Facebook Lives on this, don't you? How can they find you on Facebook?
Every Tuesday night on my Facebook page, which is valentina.tudos9, I think, I do a Facebook Live on all sorts of relationship and dating topics, whatever comes to mind, whatever my clients are presenting to me. Actually, from this week, I started a partnership with an intimate wellness brand, which is basically a sex toy company for women called Everest. And from this Sunday, I'm launching an Instagram program called Sexy Sundays, where I'm going to answer questions about sex and pleasure and intimacy. But this is on Instagram. The Real Queen Maker Instagram is where you want to catch that one. I also have a Facebook group. Find Your One True Love, it's called.
I'll put all these links in the show notes. That's amazing. You're doing so much in this dating and relationship space. It's really wonderful. And thank you for being my longtime guest on this show. I always love having you here, and it's just wonderful. My listeners out there, if you've really enjoyed this podcast and this is something that you would like to share with your friends and family, please do. If you can go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts to rate and review Hong Kong Confidential, that'd be amazing, because that will help me go up the iTunes charts and it will help people find Valentina and her dating and relationship business. If you would like to sponsor me on Patreon, you can, for as little as $1 a month, hear Valentina's answers to her 4 secret questions, which we're going to do now. And you can also listen to the secret question answers from my last 30 or 40 guests. So go on over to patreon.com/Hong Kong Confidential and just spend $8 Hong Kong a month to sponsor me, please. And that goes into all my production and editing costs. Valentina, thanks again. And I'm sure I'll see you again in Hong Kong Confidential very soon.
I look forward to that, Jules. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.